The movie begins with Max McGrath sitting on his roof, sketching a picture of his front house's view and looking sadly at the factory beyond the river. His mother, Molly, asks him to assist her in unpacking. She tells him this is their final home, promises not to move places anymore, and promises it will be a fresh start for them. So Max jokingly says it's their 9th fresh start. As he empties a box, he looks fondly at an old family picture of theirs from when his father was still alive. His mother comes in, and he asks if his father died in the factory not far from their house. She sadly replies that it did. A brief surge of electricity interrupts the lights and the television. When she leaves, Max realizes there's a strange energy emanating from his hands as he waves them in front of the TV. As Max rides his bike to school the following day, he stops and looks into an abandoned N-Tech building. At this time, he gets a text message from his mom, but as he swipes to reply, his energy interferes with the device and stops working. Then, he continues his bike ride to school, avoiding a near collision with a pickup truck. He falls off his bike and hits his head on the ground. The driver rushes over as he lies on the ground, hoping he isn't badly hurt. She leans over his head and asks if he's okay, while Max jokes that he does that every year. She tells him to meet her there after school and promises to take a look at his bike. Later, he arrives late to his class, and Max introduces himself to the teacher. Hearing his last name, the teacher asks if he's Jim McGrath's son, and he reluctantly says yes, while his classmates are shocked at this revelation. So the teacher comments that his father was a remarkable man. After class, he sees a newspaper cut out of an article about dedicating the Hall of Science to Jim McGrath. He clenches his fists in deep emotion. Unbeknownst to him, the energy he releases triggers something. After school, Sophia gives Max a lift back to her place where she helps him fix his bicycle. He thanks her, looking at her intensely. Then suddenly, a radio turns on and he hurries to leave. Later, Max arrives and meets Miles, a former colleague of his father, who joins them for dinner. During their conversation, Molly reveals that Miles convinced her to move them back to Copper Canyon. Miles says he works at N-Tech and runs it. Miles tells him he was there the night of his father's accident, the night Max's father died and tried to save him. At the same time, over at N-Tech, the subject begins to glow in a pool of water. The two scientists assigned to it begin to investigate. The water bursts into the air, forming a crystallized web that resembles chemical structures around a flying robot, like drone named Steel. The scientists call for security if there's a breach in the containment chamber. A heavily armed team arrives and is instructed not to let the subject out. Still, it has already breached the containment chamber. The robot manages to get past all the armed personnel and bust out of the building. Back in the house, the revelation distresses Max and the power suddenly goes out. Max goes to the basement and restarts the circuit breaker. As he goes to the dining table, he hears a bit of the conversation between his mom and Miles. Molly insists that Max is still a kid and not ready to hear what happened. That evening, Max looks into the events surrounding his father's death. He watches some videos of it online, but his computer suddenly turns off. He gets irritated and tries to turn it back on, but his hand suddenly starts releasing glowing blue energy from his hands. He tries to put it out by putting a pillow over it, but as he checks it out, the energy is still present. He commands it to turn off and learns he can turn it on and off at will. He opens it once again, and it releases a surge of energy that turns off all the electricity once again. The next day in the woods, he experiments with his new powers. He can use the energy he releases to power them up. He accidentally produces too much energy, which makes the appliance flame. The next day, in the school cafeteria, he suddenly gets interrupted by Sophia. However, he can't hear her, so the girl near him gets annoyed at the noise they're both causing, and she interprets what Sophia is trying to tell him. Sophia wants to meet Max at the top place on Main Street tomorrow at 4. The invitation causes Max to have a surge of emotion, and his powers seem to interfere with a nearby vending machine. It causes it to release a few cans of soda on the floor. Several other students scrambled to grab the cans it had released. Realizing his mistake, he scrambles to get his stuff and leave. At home, Max researches on his laptop about his power, using rubber gloves to not cause another electrical interference. Giving up on his research, he approaches his mother to question her about his father. He tells her that everyone in the town knows more than him and that he has no idea what happened to him or how he died. His mom says that although she would like to tell him more, his story could be more straightforward. Unbeknownst to them, an unknown entity is tracking him and detecting his energy outside his home. The next day, he bikes to the Tate joint while the unknown entity tracks him and his energy. At the Tate place, Sophia introduces Max to boba tea, much to his surprise and confusion. During their conversation, there's a growing connection between the two. She tells him she knows about his secret and he gets nervous about it. But it's only about how she sees him around the school, but doesn't join any friend groups, so she wants to show him around town. When she asks for his number, her phone isn't working, and he's suddenly overwhelmed by a rush of energy. He heads to the bathroom to try and recover, but instead enters a state of panic. He can't control his powers this time, and his chest also starts to glow with blue energy. He leaves, apologizing quickly to Sophia, and flees from the restaurant on his bike, heading into a nearby forest, where he continues on foot. At this point, he starts to scream in pain and beams of electricity start shooting out of him and toward the sky. The following day, Max awakens on his bed, relieved to see his powers have stopped. He sees burnt holes on his sheets and shirt and wounds across his chest, confusing him. He's more confused about the appearance of a flying drone-like object that can talk to him in English and knows Max's name. Max asks it what it is, and it tells him it's a parasitic, silicon-based life form, and it claims that someone named him Steel. It also claims that he's there to protect Max from whatever's trying to kill them. Steel tells Max about his energy, and Max wants to know more about it, but Steel's attention is easily distracted. As Molly hears the noise and tries to investigate the source of the noise, Max hides Steel in his laundry basket. Molly questions him about the noise, and he claims it was a bad dream. She also reminds him that he'll be late if he doesn't hurry up. Steel then tells Max he can help him by absorbing his excessive tachyon energy. He merges into Max's chest to absorb the buildup. As the two discuss the situation further in the woods, Steel explains that he feeds off Max's excess tachyon energy. If he doesn't do that, Max might explode, which could have happened the other day if Steel wasn't there to help. As they're talking, they notice the presence of a black SUV. Several men exit the vehicle and move towards them, armed with automatic weapons. Max tells Steel that if they find him, especially Steel as an alien being, they will dissect him. The armed men hear them, so the two escape on his bike. Steel shows him glimpses of what he remembers. He sees it through Steel's eye, and it explains why they link to each other. He asks what an ultralink is, and it explains that they're dangerous and destroy worlds. They make it to school, where he keeps Steel hidden in his bag. Steel, however, refuses to keep silent, causing a lot of weird looks for his fellow students as he talks away. He bumps into Sophia, and she questions him about what made him leave their date. He claims he had a bad headache, which made him leave, and promises to make it up to her soon. Max asks Steel if he has more memories, which can explain why the armed men are chasing them. Steel tells him that the Ultralinks attacked it and they always come for them. Steel tells him that Ultralinks can manipulate elements and make storms. Later, in the abandoned N-Tech building, Steel explains to Max the extent of his powers. Steel explains that if they work together, they can harmonize tachyon energy to become turbo energy, enhancing physical abilities. As Max experiments with his speed and strength more effectively, Steel tries to tell him about his gift for battle strategy. He's learning to use his powers, including jumping up and down several floors. Steel explains to Max what happens when the two combine to clad Max in a superhero-like suit of armor. When he wears the armor, he sees Steel's memories. He sees his dad in some of them. Steel explains that the tornado that killed him wasn't a tornado, but the Ultralinks. Max decides he should go and talk to Miles about this. On the way there, he nearly collides again with Sophia's truck. As they're talking, Steel alerts him to dangers, and he spots the black SUV in the distance and, once again, makes a run for it. He decides he and Steel should split up in a nearby alley and commands Steel to buy him some time. Sophia then blocks his path out of the alley and confronts Max. At this point, he decides to ask Sophia to drive him to N-Tech, as he claims he doesn't know the way. During the drive, Max explains that his father died when he was young, and moving back to the town is causing him some difficulty dealing with his grief. The two of them bond further during the drive, and he asks her to hang out next time. Finally arriving at N-Tech, Miles greets them. Max asks Miles to talk privately. Max asks him to tell him more about what happened, but the older man is reluctant to reveal anything more. He explains that his father was working on a device capable of harnessing energy to help humanity. It was his father's dream. Miles sees the device picking up Max's energy. Suddenly, sensing another surge of energy is coming, Max runs off and away, leaving a baffled Sophia back in the N-Tech facility. As he runs home, it's already dark and a massive storm is approaching, which he believes might be the Ultralinks. Max attempts to take cover near a railway track. He hears a woman and helps her restart her car using the energy from his hands, leaving him exposed to the storm. He then takes shelter in a garage and a shrapnel pierces his leg on the way there. The building he's in gets blown away, leaving him exposed again. Max first comes face to face with a red-eyed Ultralink, an alien race that can control the elements and launches the attack that killed his dad. Fortunately, Steel arrives in time to help him, and it merges with Max to form the armor. He tells Max how he can fight back, but they get me shit, which separates them. They merge once again, and the Ultralink is exposed. Max uses his turbo energy charge to take down the enemy. Steel's memory occurs, and Max sees that Steel betrayed his father long ago. Steel defends himself, claiming he fought them alongside Max's father, but Max refuses to accept this. He heads off alone and sees his house surrounded by armored men. They spot him, but he quickly runs away, and Max turns to Sophia for help. He asks for her phone, truck, and rubber gloves to insulate his hands. He drives away while speaking to Miles on her phone. Miles tells him that this has happened before. Knowing about the Ultralinks, they probably took Molly to his dad's old lab at the abandoned NT facility. At the same time, Sophia calls Max home, and Molly, who's safe at home, answers the phone. Sophia tells her that a frantic Max came over and asked for some stuff to borrow her car and phone and that he just ran out. Molly tells her everything's fine and that she'll call her back. Molly turns to the armored men. They now take orders from her, so he orders them to find her son. Meanwhile, inside the abandoned facility, Max discovers that Steel has got shut down. A flashback occurs through their link, a memory of the night of his father's death. The lab was facing an attack from the Ultralinks. Jim got strapped into a harness designed to channel his energy into the fight. However, Miles, who has sided with the Ultralinks, used this to drain and seize his energy, planning to drain Jim and kill him. But Jim orders Steel to go into stasis while he overloads the core, which kills him. Miles reveals that Jim McGrath was an alien who naturally generated turbulence. A red armor-clad Miles confronts Max. The two begin to fight, but Max is no match for Miles in his red suit. But he needs Max alive to access his energy. He threatens Max to enter the core, and he does so reluctantly. Steel wakes up, and Max apologizes to it for the misunderstanding. Bound to the power generator, Max, just like his father, plans to overload the core and form the armor. Now clad in their armor, the two confront Miles. They try to overpower each other, then Steel activates stealth mode and tries to knock Miles out. But they get knocked down and Miles absorbs his energy. Then the armored men arrive and shoot at Miles, trying to protect Max, but they have to retreat. Once pinned to a wall by Miles, Max begins to channel all of his energy into Miles. It overwhelms Miles and causes him to explode, killing him, and they win the battle. Later, Max and Steel regain consciousness. Clearly tired from the fight, Molly arrives and she finally begins to tell her son everything. The Ultralinks were trying to hunt him down, which is why she had continually changed their location to escape them. Molly also gives the pendant to Max and tells him that he'll soon understand what it is. Steel uses it to light up the array of stars his father left for him to form a three-dimensional map of space. Eager to make it up with Molly, Max apologizes for his weird behavior. He tells her she's right and thanks her for noticing him by giving her one of his hand-drawn pictures. It was the moment he first laid eyes on her she appeared upside down to him. Touched by the gesture, she kisses him with passion. The movie ends with Max and Steel going for a flight in the armor with Steel's assistance.